This video will show some options for exporting N5s using Fiji. First, let's look at block size. Let's write this image using 64 cube blocks. If you give one number for the block size, that will be the size of blocks for all dimensions. So when the image is written, we see that there is content inside of it, and for example, that there are 137 items. Now let's try using a different block size, say 128. Now, because the block sizes are larger, we would expect a smaller number of blocks because each one is larger. And now when we write that, it is indeed what we see. We have 29 items compared to the 130 or so before. What block size is right for you will depend on your application or use case. Block sizes are, as I said, the same size in all dimensions by default, but this is customizable by using a comma-separated list. For example, let's have blocks that are very large, 512 in X and 64 in Y and in Z. If we write this, let's call this 512 in X, and we press OK and look inside of this folder, we see that the first level of folders only has one folder inside of it. And that's because this level of folders describes the number of blocks needed to cover the X extent of the image. Now there is only one folder because blocks are wider than the X dimension of the image. 512 blocks compared to 505 in X for this image. Now let's look at compression. There are a number of compression options. gzip is the default. Let's try selecting raw now, which means that no compression will be applied. And we would expect the image to take more space on disk if it is uncompressed, and indeed that's what we see. Whereas our original took about 5 megabytes on disk, uncompressed, this image takes about 17.5 megabytes on disk. And again, there are several compression options, and which one is right for you will depend on your data and application. Great, let's look at the override options. I have an image containing noise here. If I, for example, tried to overwrite the image in the image dataset folder with the noise, the N5 plugins tried to help you be safe. If no override is selected, then the plugin will tell me that this image already exists and it will not overwrite anything. Next, let's look at the overwrite subset option, and this one is perhaps most interesting using macro recordability. So I will open the macro recorder and do that again. Now if we select overwrite subset, this writes this image into a subset of the existing data, and it's most easy to see what it does with an option. This option interacts with this overwrite subset offset, which you can see is the point in pixel units where the origin of this image will be written into the N5 dataset. And that's also easiest to see with an option. Let's give 100, 100, 0, and we're going to write into the image dataset and press OK. Now it did the writing. Let's open that image now. If we open that image that we overwrote to, you'll see that starting at pixel 100, 100, 100, our noise image is there, and everywhere else is our original image data. Great. Next, we'll look at the final override option, which is just overwrite. And this does what it sounds like, except that not only our data are written, but the image size is overwritten. So again, we'll put this into the image dataset. And now if we press OK, it wrote the data. And if we open the image, we'll see first that it is a different size. And if we open it, indeed, it is exactly the data, the noise data, and the original data is completely gone. There's one more option, which is thread count. N5 enables writing images in parallel on the amount parallelism can be selected with the number of threads option. Larger number of threads will mean images are written more quickly. That covers export options for the N5 plugin.